হ্যালো বন্ধুরা, শুভেচ্ছা, স্বাগতম। প্রবাসী যাযাবর তোমাদের জন্য নিলাম নিউজিল্যান্ড থেকে আরেকটি ট্রাভেল ভিডিও, এবং আজকে আমি তোমাদের অকল্যান্ডের রাস্তার ধারের কিছু চমৎকার দৃশ্য দেখাবো। ভিডিওটির একেবারে শুরুতে কিছু সিন অকল্যান্ডের বাইরে নেওয়া, যখন আমি ওয়াইটামো গ্লোওয়ার্ম কেভ থেকে অকল্যান্ডে ফিরছিলাম, কিন্তু এছাড়া অন্যান্য সমস্ত দৃশ্য অকল্যান্ড শহরের। নিউজিল্যান্ড দক্ষিণ পশ্চিম প্রশান্ত মহাসাগরের একটি দেশ, যেটি প্রধান দুটি দ্বীপ দ্বারা গঠিত। একটি হচ্ছে উত্তর এবং আরেকটি হচ্ছে দক্ষিণ দ্বীপ। অকল্যান্ডের জনসংখ্যা 1.5 মিলিয়ন। নিউজিল্যান্ডের জনসংখ্যার 1/3 অকল্যান্ডে বাস করে, এবং 39% নিউজিল্যান্ড সিটিজেনদের জন্মগ্রহণ নিউজিল্যান্ডের বাইরে। আগামী পরবর্তী ভিডিওতে আমি তোমাদের নিউজিল্যান্ডের বিভিন্ন অভিজ্ঞতা শেয়ার করব। দয়া করে আমার সাথেই থেকো, এবং ভবিষ্যতে আবার দেখা হবে। দেখার জন্য অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ। ভালো থেকো এবং সুস্থ থেকো।
Moved down Queen Street, so then Queen Street became then the more main street. 70s, 80s, 90s into the turn of the century. There's still a little bit of that activity there now. But since the turn of the century and the rapid increase of land and house prices these days, earthquake paranoid. Not that it's a recent thing. New Zealand is pretty much an earthquake volcanic country. It always has been, always probably will be. But probably a more recent history after sort of the events of Christchurch and Kaikoura. And of course, Christchurch was never an earthquake city either. Turn of the century now, with the increase in the value, that they're becoming more worthwhile to do up. You Anyway, K Road's got a lovely eclectic group of shops and cafes and restaurants, and I'm hoping they don't sanitise and gentrify the area too much, because I quite like this time of the morning. It's generally a bit quiet. It's sort of the evening times that it comes alive, really. And you get the police down here quite frequently. There's Verona Cafe just on the right here. Oh, it's not even open yet. It's a happening little place in the evening. And then just here on the right there we are, look, St Kevin's Arcade. And so it's got a wonderful collection of retro shops and a delightful cafe down the end of it. Do get renovated. A lot of those bigger buildings now get turned into apartments. Once all that strengthening work now, so making these buildings a little bit safer to work or live in. The park on the right is called Western Park. It has a very much an art focus to it. They have some wonderful art events in there. The bits of building you see sticking out of the ground down here, they're not the remnants of an earthquake or anything. That's actually a permanent art installation. And just here at the lights, I hope they turn red. I'm probably the only driver in the city that hopes the lights will turn red when I want them to, but it's not going to. But here, up on the left, this lovely, what you see at the top, it says, oh, there we go, we're not going to stop that now. Lord Ponsonby's Antiques. It's probably the most run-down wooden building in the whole city now. But we're going to see a number of wooden buildings as we drive around. There'll be single-storey villas, double-storey villas, and churches, and they're all built out of solid kauri timber. It's KAU. So just on the right here is a nice example of some of these shop frontages, all these connected ones. In these cases, they're all protected. The shop front, the back of them you can't see. They could knock down and build something else. The street on the right here, if you look right, you do get some nice views. So as I said, when I first came to Auckland, I lived in Ponsonby. The main part of Ponsonby is down here. Or it was back then. It still is a little bit. It's spread right down the road now. And I actually lived in a little street up here. I just want to show you the street because it's got all these very old working class houses down it. They're all very, very expensive now and renovated. But it's this street just here on the right. Take a look down there. They're all through that area actually, but you just see a few down there on the left-hand side, all very close together. No off-street parking. In fact, the houses were that close together, I could put my hand out my bedroom window and the neighbour could do the same and we could shake hands. Mind you, back then I was a lot younger, we'd have a lot of house parties, we'd be sharing a few beers between the windows. As I said, a lot of the inner city houses are taken over by professional people, like these ones here on the left. There's an accountant in one and a lawyer in the other. And where there's something they could pull down, an old workshop or factory, they tend to build apartments like these ones on the left. But even in this area, say a one-bedroom apartment will still cost you probably about $400,000 to $500,000. I don't know if it's going to sparkle much today. But in Maori, Wai, W-A-I, there's a lot of places around New Zealand with Wai in it. It means water because we're pretty much surrounded a lot with water. And other places like you probably heard of Waiheke Island or Waitomo Caves. In the case of Waitomo Caves, Tomo means basically a hole in the ground. And you've got Wai, so it's water in a hole in the ground, which it is, it's Waitomo Caves. St Mary's around to the right, average price here $3 to $4 million. On the intersection here, just to the right, there's a lovely little park called Point Erin Park. It was originally a Maori Pa site. Now, a Maori Pa was sort of their version of like a fortified village. And they always built them on strategic headlands and elevated areas to give them maximum advantage. And then what they'd do is around the edge of these areas, they'd build wooden palisades. That only finished erupting 550 years ago, so not very long at all. There'll be some people that try and get you to believe that the volcanic could come off the bridge up by some lights. So this way we're heading north right now, and this is the number one highway. So now we're going to come down onto what we call the North Shore. It's still part of Auckland, we just call it the North Shore. The main suburb over here is Takapuna, just straight ahead of us there with all the... I'll tell you a bit more about it then. no toll over the bridge or on the motorway. The only toll system we've got is further north at the top end of this motorway, still about 50 k's away. There is a tunnel and there's a toll to go through that tunnel. Just off to the left there is Rangitoto, but as I said, we'll be going past here a bit later on. And then in between those two ships, you'll see a revolving restaurant. And of course, if you're feeling a bit brave, you can do a sky jump up there, or a sky walk. They did offer it to me a few years ago. I laughed and I said, you guys are going to pay me to step off here. But anyway, even if they paid me, I don't think I'd do it. So. Auckland's also referred to as the city of sails and surfing. It's also where you find the Tasman Sea. That's that body of water between New Zealand and Australia. And if you manage to, we quite often refer to that water as the ditch. You're going to jump the ditch. And if you stayed in a straight line across the ditch, you'd bump into that little island over there called Australia, down Melbourne way. Melbourne and Auckland are on similar latitudes. Back in 1642. Unfortunately, Abel didn't hang around too long. He had work done, take it out of the water, give it a clean. You can get it all done down here. First up though, down here, just on the right here, you see a building with a wooden little lighthouse hanging on the side of it. It's a very historic lighthouse, and I'll show you the real one out in the harbour later. It's a very historic Kauri lighthouse called Beam Rock Lighthouse. It sits on a rock on a reef out there. Now, if you don't have a sailing boat and you've got a little motorboat and you've got nowhere to keep it in your inner city apartment, or maybe down that street where I used to live with no off-street parking, there's actually a business just here on the left. I'll go nice and slow past the doorway on the left here. See this open doorway here? If you look in there and through the front windows, you'll see all these stacked up motorboats on either side, and there's about 4 or 5 stories high. Do whatever you want done to it. Give it a clean, pop it back up on the shelf again. Just like your most favourite library book, really. Now also keep in mind, ever since we left the harbour bridge, all this flat area that we're going to be driving over, and it's quite an extensive area, right? And also just up to the left there, you'll see a big blue coloured boat there with a big sailing mast. Everybody see that boat just there? That's good, because that's my boat. Yeah.